Listen closely, because what I'm about to say may finally put words to the kind of quiet that keeps your mind active at night. The kind of emotional distance that feels louder than any argument. And the kind of behavior that leaves your heart searching for meaning long after everyone else has stopped trying to understand it. There are moments when a person never truly tells you what they feel directly. Instead, they reveal it through what they do, through patterns, through hesitation, through absence and return, through warmth and coldness mixed together in ways that don't make immediate sense. And there are times when someone is trying very hard to communicate something important, not with clear sentences or direct confessions, but through inconsistency, through emotional contradiction, through pulling away and then coming back, through silence followed by sudden attention, through confusion that feels personal, but is actually revealing something deeper inside them. That is where the real truth often hides. Not in what is said, but in what repeats. Not in explanations, but in behavior. And if you have ever felt stuck wondering why someone seems close one moment and distant the next, why they act like they care and then suddenly withdraw, why they disappear and return as if nothing happened, then you already know this is not random. It feels like something unresolved moving in circles. As Carl Jung would suggest, you do not always learn about people from their words alone. You learn from the patterns underneath their words. Because a person can speak clearly and still be internally conflicted. They can smile while carrying tension. They can deny feelings while living inside them. They can act detached while being emotionally involved in ways they do not fully understand themselves. And if you have been waiting for clarity, if you have been asking yourself whether they still think about you, whether the connection meant something to them, why they step forward and then step back, why they go silent and then reappear, then understand this possibility. The answer may already be visible in their behavior. Not in what they promised, not in what they avoided saying, but in the contradiction itself. Because your person may be showing you something without knowing how to explain it. They are not as unaffected as they try to appear. They are not as emotionally distant as they pretend. And they are certainly not as internally calm as their silence suggests. Something inside them has been stirred, something unsettled, something that does not return to its original place easily once awakened. And when someone cannot face what they feel directly, those feelings do not disappear. They leak out in indirect ways. They show up in hesitation, in inconsistent communication, in sudden curiosity about you, in checking in and pulling back, in remembering you and then acting like they should not. They show up in dreams, in thoughts that interrupt their focus, in emotional waves they do not openly explain. One important psychological truth is this: the conscious mind can justify almost anything, but the unconscious mind reveals what is actually happening inside. A person might say they are fine. They might say they don't care. They might say they have moved on. But their behavior sometimes tells a completely different story in subtle ways. They may claim indifference while still finding reasons to stay connected. They may say they are over it while still circling back emotionally. They may insist there is nothing there while still reacting strongly to your presence or absence. And here is the contradiction. Real indifference does not need defense. Real detachment does not require explanation. Real emotional absence does not repeatedly revisit the same connection. So when someone keeps reacting, keeps pulling back, keeps returning, keeps oscillating between closeness and distance, something inside them is still active. And often, resistance is not proof of absence, it is proof of impact. Because people rarely resist what does not matter to them. They resist what touches something real inside them. Something unprocessed. Something they cannot fully control. So when someone pulls away, it is not always because they feel nothing. Sometimes it is because they feel too much and do not know how to hold it without losing control of themselves. When emotions feel overwhelming, people often try to regain balance by stepping back, by creating distance, by acting colder than they actually are. But emotional distance does not erase emotional reality. It only delays expression. And this is why your person may seem contradictory. One part of them moves toward you, another part pulls away. One part remembers connection, comfort, familiarity, warmth. Another part becomes alert, cautious, defensive, afraid of vulnerability. This internal split creates confusion, not just for you, but for them as well. Because when a person is divided internally, their behavior becomes inconsistent externally. They do not fully know which side of themselves will lead in any given moment. One moment they feel like reaching out. The next moment they feel like disappearing. One moment they want closeness. The next moment they fear what closeness will reveal. That internal conflict becomes exhausting, and instead of resolving it, many people unconsciously express it through mixed signals. They come close, then retreat. They engage, then withdraw. They show interest, then avoid emotional depth when it appears. This is not always intentional harm. Sometimes it is emotional instability caused by fear, unresolved past experiences, or lack of emotional tools to handle intensity. Carl Jung spoke about how what is not consciously understood does not vanish. It grows in the unconscious and eventually expresses itself through behavior. That is why people repeat emotional cycles. That is why they revisit similar patterns. That is why they find themselves drawn back into the same unresolved dynamics again and again. Because they are not just returning to a person, they are returning to an emotional state they have not fully processed. So when your person comes and goes, when they seem emotionally inconsistent, when they appear interested and then distant, it may not simply be confusion about you. It may be confusion within themselves. They may be carrying something they cannot yet articulate clearly. Something like, I feel something, but I don't know how to manage it. And that kind of emotional truth often does not come out directly. It shows itself in behavior instead, in silence, in hesitation, in unpredictability. What looks like coldness may actually be self-protection. What looks like pride may actually be fear of emotional exposure. What looks like indifference may actually be attachment mixed with uncertainty. What looks like silence may actually be an overloaded mind trying not to say too much. And if you have ever dealt with someone emotionally complex, you begin to recognize this pattern. Some people are not distant because they do not care. They are distant because caring feels overwhelming to them. It exposes something inside them they are not ready to face. When love becomes a mirror, not everyone feels comfortable looking into it. Because a mirror does not only reflect the other person, it reflects what is unresolved inside you as well. Sometimes you become that mirror for them. You reflect back emotions they have not healed. You trigger awareness they are not prepared for. You awaken longing they tried to silence. You represent something real that challenges their internal control. And when that happens, many people do what emotionally unprepared hearts often do. They step back from the intensity. Not because it is meaningless, but because it is too meaningful to process easily. So silence should not always be mistaken for absence. Distance should not always be mistaken for loss of feeling. Emotional withdrawal does not always mean emotional ending. Often, the more significant the connection, the more internal resistance it creates in someone who is not fully ready to hold it. Some people leave because they feel nothing, but many people pull away because they feel too much and cannot stabilize it within themselves. Some disappear because they are done. Others disappear because something inside them is still unresolved. And unresolved people create unresolved connections. They send mixed signals because they are internally mixed. They show affection and withdrawal in the same cycle. They make you feel chosen and then distant. They make you question the connection while they are also questioning their own emotional capacity. And this is where it becomes painful. Because you are left trying to interpret behavior that is coming from their internal conflict, not from a clear decision about you. They may not even fully understand how deeply they have been affected you, but they absolutely know something inside them has also been affected too. That is what they are trying to show you again and again. Not through clear words, not through clean explanations, but through repeated behavior that keeps coming back until you finally notice the emotional truth underneath it. They want closeness, but closeness also makes them uneasy. They want certainty, but certainty asks for honesty. They want connection, but connection requires openness. They want to be understood, but to be understood they must reveal parts of themselves they have even hidden from their own awareness. So they remain trapped between want and fear, between desire and defense, between emotion and survival instincts, between what they feel and what they believe they can handle. In that inner space, you become something they cannot easily explain. You become the thought they cannot fully push away. You become the memory that does not fade on command. You become the feeling that refuses to be controlled. That is why your absence sometimes affects them even more than your presence ever did. Not because your presence has no meaning, but because distance removes distraction and forces feeling to rise on its own. When you are not there is no routine to hide behind. The mind has fewer excuses. The heart begins to speak in a quieter but stronger voice. Images of you come back in pieces, not as full stories but as fragments. A moment, a tone, a sentence, a silence, a glance, a regret, a hope, a question left unanswered. And slowly, the person who acted certain starts to feel less certain inside. This is how the inner mind works. It does not announce its truth loudly. It does not arrive with clarity. It returns quietly, like something small but persistent. It shows up as repeated thoughts, as emotional waves, as sudden memories that do not seem to have a clear reason. It appears in dreams, in unexpected reminders, in the urge to check, to reconnect, to reach out, to understand again what was left unfinished. The mind has its own timing, and it does not follow pride. It does not follow ego. It does not follow the mask of, "I am over it." It only keeps circling one question again and again. What inside me is still unresolved? And in many emotional connections, what remains unresolved is not lack of feeling. It is fear of what feeling demands. Because real emotion asks for truth. Real emotion asks for honesty. Real emotion asks for responsibility. Real emotion asks for presence and emotional maturity. And most of all, it asks for the courage to be seen without hiding behind a mask. For some people, that is more difficult than losing the connection itself. So they stay in the middle space, not fully in, not fully out, not fully honest, not fully gone. They come close, then step back. They reach out, then withdraw. They show interest, then disappear into silence. And all of this is not always about playing games in a simple way. Sometimes it is confusion. Sometimes it is emotional fear. Sometimes it is self-protection. Sometimes it is a struggle with their own inner world that they do not know how to manage. They may not even fully understand why they act the way they do. One part of them feels pulled toward you, while another part tells them to stay safe, stay guarded, stay distant. So you become the space where their internal conflict keeps playing out without words. This is also why love is often misunderstood. People think love is always direct, always clear, always confident. But real emotional connection is not always organized. Sometimes it is messy. Sometimes it is uncertain. Sometimes it shows itself through hesitation, through silence, through inconsistency, through emotional distance that still carries attachment inside it. A person can care deeply and still not know how to express it. A person can feel strongly and still struggle to act. A person can be emotionally impacted and still appear distant on the surface. That is the contradiction of human emotion. What is felt inside does not always match what is shown outside. And when someone keeps returning in some way, even indirectly, even emotionally, even through small signs, memories, curiosity, or unfinished contact. It may not be random. It may be the emotional system still trying to process what was never fully completed. It may be the mind circling something it cannot close. It may be the heart still reacting to a bond that left an impact deeper than expected. But this does not mean everything is clear or ready. It simply means something inside them is still active, still moving, still unresolved. Do not confuse silence with emptiness. Do not confuse distance with complete absence. Do not confuse confusion with lack of importance. People can look calm while feeling torn inside. People can look detached while still thinking deeply. People can look like they have moved on while still carrying emotional weight they do not talk about. What is visible on the surface is not always the full truth of what is happening within. And maybe the hardest part to understand is this. Sometimes what they are trying to tell you is not that they do not feel anything. It is that they feel too much and do not know how to handle it. Maybe your presence awakens something in them that they had not faced for a long time. Maybe you touched a part of them that was hidden, quiet, or protected. Maybe your connection made it difficult for them to continue pretending that they are unaffected or fully in control. Some people build their identity around emotional control. They believe staying distant means staying safe. They believe staying guarded means staying strong. They believe staying closed means staying unhurt. But life often brings experiences that break those beliefs slowly from the inside. When that happens, their emotional structure becomes unstable. They feel more than they expected. They think about you more than they planned. They react in ways they cannot fully explain. This is why inconsistency appears, not always because of intention, but because of internal conflict. One side wants closeness, the other side fears it. One side wants honesty, the other side fears exposure. One side wants connection, the other side wants protection. And this constant inner division creates mixed behavior that confuses both them and you. But there is an important truth underneath all of this. If something affects a person deeply enough to disturb their peace, then it is not meaningless to them. If your presence continues to live in their thoughts in any form, then it is not nothing. But at the same time, impact does not automatically mean clarity, and feeling does not automatically mean action. Many people feel deeply and still struggle to express or act on what they feel. Emotional awareness and emotional courage are not the same thing. In many ways, relationships become a mirror for the inner world. They reveal what is healed and what is still broken. They show what is secure and what is still afraid. They bring forward emotions that were hidden for a long time. One person enters another person's life not only as a connection, but as a trigger for self-awareness. They awaken memories, fears, desires, insecurities, and unfinished emotional patterns. So what you are seeing in their behavior is not only about you, it is also about what you brought to the surface inside them. This is why clarity does not always come quickly. Because what is unresolved inside a person does not disappear with time alone. Time only reveals it more clearly. And as time passes, you may start noticing signs in small ways. Indirect communication, emotional echoes, hesitation in moving on completely, moments of return followed by distance again, and subtle signs that the connection was not fully erased internally, even if it looks distant externally. So what is the truth they are trying to tell you? They are trying to tell you that what happened between you is not fully gone inside them. They are trying to tell you that they are not as unaffected as they may appear. They are trying to tell you that something in them still reacts when it comes to you. They are trying to tell you that the emotional thread has not fully disappeared, even if it is not expressed clearly. But at the same time, they may not have the strength, clarity, or readiness to turn those feelings into action. And you have to understand something important for yourself in all of this. You cannot build your worth on someone else's confusion. You cannot measure your value by how ready someone else is. You cannot shrink yourself waiting for someone to become emotionally clear. Their inner conflict is not your identity. Their silence is not your definition. Their inconsistency is not your worth. Their emotional struggle is not your responsibility to fix. The most freeing realization is this: not everyone who feels something will know how to handle it. Not everyone who is affected will know how to respond. Not everyone who cares will know how to show it properly. Some people will feel deeply but remain emotionally unprepared. And that has nothing to do with your value, your presence, or your significance. Not everyone who comes back into your life is actually ready to stay in it. Not everyone who feels your absence has enough courage to speak it out loud. Not everyone who thinks about you is disciplined enough to show up with honesty, clarity, and emotional responsibility. And not everyone who feels torn inside themselves can offer you a calm and steady presence on the outside. So you slowly learn something important here. You learn to hear what is not being said directly. You start to listen under the words, instead of only listening to the words themselves. You begin to notice patterns instead of promises. You begin to pay attention to repetition instead of one-time moments. You begin to observe what remains after conversations end, not just what is said during them. You start to understand emotional residue, the feeling that stays in your system long after the interaction is over. You also begin to notice your own body more clearly, how it reacts when their name appears, how your chest feels when you think of them, how your mind becomes active even in their silence. These reactions are not random. They are part of a deeper communication that goes beyond logic. There is a quieter layer of understanding that exists beneath surface thinking. Sometimes your inner self already knows something before your thoughts are able to explain it. Sometimes your peace recognizes instability long before your hope is willing to accept it. Sometimes your intuition hears truths that are never spoken directly. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is not to chase a confession from someone, but to accept what their behavior has already been expressing in fragments and incomplete signals. It is possible that this person in your mind is also going through something they cannot fully control. In their own way, they are changed by what they felt with you. They are stirred emotionally, even if they do not show it clearly. They are shaken internally, even if they appear calm on the surface. They are confronted with parts of themselves they may have avoided for years. They are exposed to emotions they did not prepare for. And they are awakened to something deeper within themselves through the experience of you. Because of that, your presence is no longer stored in a simple part of their memory. It does not stay only as a normal thought or a casual reminder of the past. It moves into a deeper place inside them. It becomes something more embedded, something that sits inside their emotional structure. It becomes part of their internal world, in a way that is not easy to remove or ignore. And this is why certain connections do not fade in the usual way people expect. Some people do not simply move on from each other. Instead, they remain present in the background of the mind. They become a reference point that the heart compares things against. They become a lesson that reshapes how someone sees relationships. They become a mirror that once showed something real and cannot be completely forgotten. A mirror does not stop being a mirror just because the person steps away from it. It still holds the reflection it once revealed. In the same way, when someone has seen a version of themselves through another person, especially in a deep emotional connection, that awareness does not fully disappear. It may get buried, it may get ignored, but it does not vanish easily. Something in them remembers. So if there is any truth trying to emerge from all of this, it is not always loud or direct. It is often subtle and repeated. What is real does not disappear just because it is difficult to express. What is meaningful does not stop existing just because it is uncomfortable to face. What is hidden tends to push itself toward expression again and again, until it is either understood or transformed into something else. That is also why silence should never be misunderstood as nothing. Silence is not always empty. Distance is not always clean separation. Behavior often carries more truth than spoken explanations. What someone does, especially repeatedly, often reveals more than what they claim or deny. Emotional truth leaks out in patterns, not in perfect sentences. At this stage, it is possible that this person is trying, in their own limited and human way, to communicate something that they cannot fully put into words. They may not be fully over what they felt. They may not be fully at peace with it. They may not have resolved the internal conflict that this connection created inside them. And they may still carry the emotional weight of what you awakened in them, even if they avoid saying it directly. But even if they never express it clearly, you begin to understand something deeper on your side. You start to see the structure underneath the confusion. You realize that not every feeling arrives as certainty. Not every truth comes as confession. Not every attachment turns into action. Sometimes what people feel shows up as mixed signals. Sometimes it appears as distance followed by return. Sometimes it shows up as silence that still feels heavy and meaningful. And once you understand this, you stop waiting blindly for words to rescue you from what behavior has already shown you. You start standing in awareness instead of confusion. You begin to trust the pattern more than the promise. You allow reality to be enough, even when it is incomplete or emotionally uncomfortable. The truth is often already present in the way someone hesitates. It is present in the way they come closer and then pull away. It is present in the emotional tension that never fully disappears between two people. It is present in how they reappear in your thoughts without warning, and how you also reappear in theirs in ways neither of you fully controls. These emotional echoes are part of the connection, even when nothing is being said out loud. And when you look at it honestly, you see that what they are trying to communicate is not simple. It is layered. It is conflicted. It is real in feeling but unclear in expression. What they feel is real, what they fear is real, and what they cannot say is often the most sensitive part of the entire situation. So you stop ignoring silence as if it means nothing. You stop treating contradiction as if it is meaningless. You stop dismissing emotional distance as if it has no message inside it. Because sometimes, when someone cannot say, "I need you," their behavior still reflects dependence in hidden ways. Sometimes, when they cannot say, "You matter," they show it through hesitation and emotional pull. Sometimes, when they cannot say, "I am afraid," they show it through withdrawal at moments of closeness. And sometimes, when they cannot say, "I am not over you," their inconsistency says it for them over time.